Okay, opening your eyes when ready and coming back into the room. Good morning, everybody. How are we all doing? That's good, excellent. So we have got a really nice sized group today, actually. Very, very good. We've got the opportunity to do a nice in-depth practice this afternoon. Last time I was over in November and we had, I think, 36 people or something like that. It was pretty big, so difficult. I've just noticed someone's arriving there in the background as well, so they'll be coming in a moment. So a warm welcome to you all. For those of you who haven't met me, my name's Tony Collins and I work from Queensland. I'm just over to run a training. I train people in past life regression and life between lives. So I'll be running a training later in the week and have been warmly invited by Jodica to come and do a workshop today. So really looking forward to taking you through life between lives and past lives. It's not just past lives, sorry. I know that a lot of people come for the past life regression, but we're going to be talking about the in-between lives experience as well and what happens there. The workshop's loosely broken into two sections. We're going to do this particular segment to start off with will be about 90 minutes and I'll just talk you through the entire process of past and between lives regression. We'll have a little break for about 15 minutes. When we come back, we're going to have an experiential second session. Could I see a show of hands for those who've had a past life regression before? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. A show of hands for anyone who's had a past life regression. Hello. Okay. Oh, I see. So not been to see someone for a past life regression, but you've had some past life memories. Okay, great. Okay, many of us have actually, quite spontaneously they can happen. So we'll have an experiential section after the break. My experience with past lives and life between lives, I've been working with it for 15 years now. I've done about 4,000 hours of past life regression and it's fascinating stuff, very, very interesting. When I work with people and when I train people, I'm not just looking to go back to past lives and find out who we were and what we did. And as interesting as that is, we are also looking for therapeutic outcomes. The purpose of lives from the soul perspective and how do we bring about a healing in the current life body. So majority of the clients that I see will come in and they'll have a particular issue that they want to work on and we'll track it back to past lives, work out what the soul plan is for having that lifetime, that issue, and then we'll do work on clearing it and setting them up for a future where they can live without that particular problem. So past lives, I think back in the 70s and 80s and when it first started to become popular in the West, it was very much a kind of go along and, oh wow, let's go and see who we were and what we got up to and that type of thing. It has evolved a lot in that time and we're now definitely looking for therapy links and resolving particular problems. So I guess the first question really is reincarnation itself. We live in the Western culture and the Western culture certainly does not have a model for reincarnation. Many other cultures do, of course, the Hindus and Buddhists, and I think if we were to look across the world globally, of the 8 billion people on the planet at the moment, I'd say more than half would probably believe in reincarnation, but in the West we don't really have it as a model. We tend to have a model of what happens after death according to the West. Now, when you get your real skeptics or your atheists, they would probably lean towards option number 1 there. Everything just goes black. It's all over. We turn to dust. It was a random, meaningless existence in a random universe and nothing happened. Okay? And that's it. Here for a minute and gone. The other option, of course, if we look into our more Christian or Catholicism type models, would pretty much say that we get one shot. This is it. This is your one lifetime and you better get it right. Or you could find yourself going south at the end of the lifetime. And if you do get it right, of course, you head off to heaven and stay there for eternity. There is a third option. I'd just like to say something else happens. When you work with people with regression, it's very, very open-ended questions. So it's not like go to the spirit realms or anything like that. What we're doing is we're tracking memories. We're actually tracking a person's what's naturally in their memory banks. And then the open-ended questions are things like what happens next, and you look for consistency in what people say about what happens after death. And there is, I have to say, a massive amount of consistency in what people say at their death points in past life regression. So, I'm not sure if any of you are well read on the topic or not, but these are very influential authors in the field of past life regression. Edgar Cayce was one of the first. He was a psychic and very well respected, well known, I guess, esoteric psychologist back in the 20s and 30s and 40s. He pretty much did what I can see as the first Western person to do a fair bit of past life regression. Very interesting guy and very interesting body of work. Denise Linn is very good. As I go through this list, has anybody read these books or books by these authors? Yep? Okay, good. Brian Weiss, he would be arguably the biggest influence on Western people through his books. He's got a huge amount of books on past life regression. Excellent writer and some very, very interesting case studies. Ian Stevenson did a lot of work with children's past lives, which is a fascinating body of work. If you want to sort of regress people to find out if past lives are legitimate or not, regressing children is great because they've got no reference point through either reading books for years or watching TV and movies for years. They just naturally go into the memories and come up with them. I did see a really interesting one on YouTube recently. Did anyone see the one about the Indian boy who solved his own murder? Oh, it was brilliant, yeah. He's 4 years old and he went to his parents and told them that he'd been killed by a certain man and that his body was buried right there. They went to the police, they dug up the grave and there was the body buried right there. Went to the guy, put it on him and said, "Hey, did you kill this guy?" And he said, "Yes, I did." He was pretty old. So basically the soul had been murdered, put in a hole, gone back to the spirit realms, come back down, remembered it, went back to the same place, which doesn't always happen. So he sort of recycled in the incarnation back into the same place. And went off and said, "Here's where you'll find me." Yeah, Ian Stevenson, he did a huge body of work with children's past lives. Very, very interesting reading if you want to explore this topic in detail. He's a great author. Michael Newton as well. Now, Michael Newton was the first of several psychiatrists in the US to pioneer a new method, which was called the Life Between Lives spiritual regression. So I'll just get a show of hands briefly so I know where everyone's at. Has everybody heard of Life Between Lives or read anything by Michael Newton? 1, 2, so not many. Excellent. Okay, good. Newton took it a step further. So let's just say with past life regression, what we're doing is we're putting a person into trance, taking them back into the past, recalling their past life memories and having them relive the experience of being in the body in the past life regression. And you just explore it scene by scene. So it's sort of like, what happens next? And they'll tell you all about where they are. I'm in a marketplace and there's carts over there and I'm wandering over and I'm buying fruit. And then you take them to the next scene and the next scene and the next scene. Newton was a little bit different. His work, it actually came about by accident, which is where a lot of things, the best things come from sometimes. Newton was a complete skeptic, psychiatrist, but he did do childhood regression. He was working with a client one day. He got a little sloppy with a language pattern and he said, "Go back to the first time you experienced this." He didn't say, "Go back to the first time in childhood you experienced this." And the guy went back and he's recounting a memory of dying on a battlefield. He's taking a bayonet through the belly. And Newton's sitting there going, "Oh Lordy, here we go, yep, some sort of wish fulfillment. We'll get on with it. We'll get him back into his childhood in a moment." He said, "What happens next?" "Well, I'm coming out of the body now. And I'm looking down at the body and I can see myself dead with a bayonet through my belly." Newton was like, "Yeah, come on, hurry up. What happens next?" He's like, "Well, I'm sort of turning around now and I'm looking up into the sky and I'm shooting off into the sky and I can feel being pulled as if I'm getting a pull to go up." And he's like, "Okay, what happens next?" He goes, "Well, I'm sort of arriving somewhere now and it's like I'm a really light body form. I'm not physical anymore. And I'm being met by someone." "Okay, who are you being met by?" "Oh, it's my guide or my teacher. He's here and he's welcoming me back to the spirit realms." Anyway, this was enough to spark Newton's interest. And he started exploring it and ended up specialising. Over a period of 30 years, he did 7,500 cases and then got a fully detailed map of what happens after coming out of the body at the death point, associating to being in a soul or energy light body form, and then moving through various stages before planning and coming back down into the next reincarnation. And what he found was an enormous amount of consistency. It is, in my own work with clients, I'd say that consistency is there for every person, whether they've read the books or not. I love working with people who've never heard of it or read about it, because they come in and they've got no pre-existing notion of what could happen, and they pretty much say the same thing. Very much, I would say the content changes a little bit, so who they meet, how they travel, what they notice is a little bit different, but the context is the same. i.e. I'm going here, I'm meeting the guide, I'm going here, I'm meeting my group, I'm going here, I'm meeting the elders, or whatever it happens to be. I'm going to talk about that in a lot more detail in this first segment as well. That's coming up. A couple of other very influential people in the field of regression or regression therapy, Dolores Cannon and Tad James. I'm not sure if anyone's read Dolores Cannon at all. Fascinating read if you're into past lives or would like to get into past lives. Now, she sort of, everybody has their own little kind of avenues that they like to explore. Newton was very much life between lives, Weiss was past lives. Dolores Cannon was specifically looking for advanced souls, advanced or possibly even souls who had an extraterrestrial origin. She's got volumes of work, they're all about this big, transcripts from sessions, they're mind-blowing, really, really interesting stuff. So she was a little bit different. She was looking for, I guess, what we would call star seeds. And they would be souls that have originated off-world. They probably started their incarnation cycle somewhere else, and they tend to come to Earth on a volunteer type basis to help out with raising vibrations or with, just generally advancing the evolution of the planet. They've got a specific thing that's a bit different to everybody else. Tad James, there's not many of them as well. I mean, percentage-wise, I think they estimate about 15 to 20% of the population would be in that bracket.
Have you got them written down somewhere, a list?
I can send that exactly that list and some recommended books that they come with, and I'll do it. I'm not sure I've got. I'll put a list out. Just pop your email down. Yeah. Anybody who would like some info after the workshop, I'll send that along. Final guy, Tad James, very big in the NLP field, but he invented something called timeline therapy. Has anyone heard of timeline therapy or experienced it? Okay, it's a really good regression model. Some people struggle to just authentically connect with memories for various reasons. I'll talk about blocks that can occur a little bit later today. But sometimes if you set up what's called a timeline, it gets easier to explore memories. And a timeline would be literally just saying to a person, let's create a line of memories, or a line, and it's got all of your memories in them, sequentially lined up. Tad's probably, in my opinion, his contribution to the field is arguably very, very high, because he started to work with people at the very first time an issue started, which is very, very important. And I'll talk about that as the segment goes on as well. But let's just say a person comes in for therapy and they're having trouble with anxiety, for instance. Now, it's probable, if it's a soul plan, part of their soul plan to work through that issue and develop a spiritual skill out of it, it's probable that there's going to be a number of lifetimes before this one, and it may have started 5 or 6 lifetimes ago. So if you just do a standard past life regression, you could go back to 2 or 3 ago and do some work there, but you're not getting it at the source. You're not getting it at the first point of origin. And that's where Tad's contribution was really important. He said, you've got to go back to the very first time it happened. So when I work with people and when I train my students, that's where we go. Always to the lifetime where it first started. Alrighty, so just a little about, I guess this is my lineage and the work that I've been doing for 15 years now. Started with hypnosis and hypnotherapy. Largely misunderstood still, I think, in the Western world as well. A lot of people still have fears about hypnosis and hypnotherapy. It's a very, very gentle process. A lot of applications. I take it everyone in this room's meditated, right? You all had a meditation. Hypnosis and meditation, not that different, really. Not that different. They can be set up slightly differently, but yeah. Other things that I was trained in, past life and current life regression therapy. I'll just broadly say that what we're looking at doing in any of this work is healing memories, healing the effects of negative memories. And I'll talk about the importance of that shortly as well. Life between lives, so that's where you do the big session with someone and you explore that what happens when they're in soul form between the lifetimes. That can take up to 5 hours. So it's a pretty long day for a lot of people to go through. And I honestly think that in that 5 hours, we're just scratching the surface. I think there could be a lot more to it. And timeline therapy as well is something that I've trained in and worked with a lot of people with. All right, let's just do a brief definition here of the mind, body, and the spirit. You haven't got to go too far these days to find a bevy of mind, body, spirit therapies. And it's really, really good that we live in this age, that all three of these aspects of consciousness are now being treated. I think a lot of therapies over the years have pretty much just focused on this and this, body and mind. Body has a symptom, develops a problem, so we go and we have it treated either surgically or through medicine or through physiotherapy or whatever. The mind, of course, if we run into mental problems, we will go for psychology or counselling. All of these things very, very valuable, don't get me wrong. Alongside it though as well is this guy, the soul. Now from the Life Between Lives model, we know that the soul is going to come back and reincarnate in bodies time and time again until it gets its lessons learnt and until it resolves an issue. So knowing what the soul's plan is in any symptom, whether it's body or mental or anything like that, is invaluable. And to exclude it in therapy, we may not get the full result that we're looking for. I'm going to do a brief definition of these three guys. That's a little small on the slide, I'm sorry. It's probably, can everyone see that all right? Okay. Unconscious mind, the body, okay? Everybody in this room has an unconscious mind. In fact, every creature on the planet has an unconscious mind. Think of a dog or a bird or even a tree. The entire planet, Carl Jung referred to it as a collective unconscious. Everything has an unconscious or a coup aspect. So let's have a look at what the human unconscious consists of, because it's a very, very important aspect of our being. Number one job of the unconscious mind is to store memories. That's its number one job. May not seem like it, but it definitely is. Everybody in the room, just at the moment, think about your current age. Think about how many years you've been alive, and think about exactly how many memories there are that go with just that bit, all the way back to the day you were born. Yeah? Now, if we try and remember all of those things at any one time, we fry. The circuit simply can't do it. We have to sort of focus on little chunks of memory at a time. But the unconscious remembers every single thing. Every single person in this room, at some point, was an infant and a baby. I'm assuming, unless any of you were immaculately conceived or just zapped down here from somewhere. But we all had that experience one day of just waking up as a baby in the bassinet or whatever and wanting to put feet on the floor and kind of take those first steps. Yeah? What's actually happening there is the body memory kicks in. First of all, there's instinct. The unconscious mind knows it's got to walk. Just like a bird, one day, when it's ready, knows that it has these things on its side that it's going to extend and fly. Just like dogs and cats are dogs and cats. They just naturally develop in their instinctive behaviour. So humans, we're very much the same. The unconscious mind governs all of our instinctive behaviours. So those first steps that we take, we sort of sit there and we start wanting... Now, mistakes are made to begin with. We overbalance, we can't quite get it right, fall over, hit our head. What happens is the unconscious mind remembers what didn't work and starts to develop what does work and then installs it. Now, the whole point of it being an unconscious memory is that once that's been done and practiced again and again and again and again, we don't have to put any effort in it anymore. Does anyone? On all of these factors, values, beliefs, those kind of things. We don't want to spend too much time on that. We actually want to spend more time on this, really. Third aspect of consciousness is this guy, the higher self, the soul or the spirit self. Fascinating field of inquiry. This is where we go much broader, and we could get any number of things happening with the soul. So every person, it has the body, it has the personality and the conscious mind, but the only reason that it's here in the first place really is because the soul has decided to incarnate and live a lifetime with various factors, all the various factors. So let's see. What's this guy all about? I love this, yeah. For those who can't read it, it just says, what if this reality is a dream and when we die we wake up? It's kind of true from the Life Between Lives reports. So, it's really funny. We live a long life. Most of us will live a long life, and you think back on all the countless experience that's occurred just in this lifetime alone. I mean, there's heaps of years, so many memories, so many things going on. Death point, come out of the body, a couple of lifetimes soon, and for some people they may have had 100 or more lifetimes. It ends up being that big, that big. If we were to have a timeline way out like this, and each dot represents a lifetime between the dots, what we're going to end up with, I won't go all the way, but just imagine it, is a current life. If we're up here looking at it from there, it is not very big at all. Yeah, which is kind of interesting in a lot of ways. Does actually, when I first started learning this work, it really changed the focus on what was I going to focus on in this lifetime, That's, for me personally, I sort of, looking at that particular model and having a lot of regression experiences, I thought to myself, well, what's going to be important? I've actually now done about 4,000 death points with people. So hearing what happens when they die in a past life and come out of the body, and the various things that are said, and oftentimes they'll be talking about the stuff that was unresolved, stuff that didn't quite get finished, the stuff that, and they'll be like, damn it, I didn't quite get that. And there's a certain awareness that, okay, I'm going to have to go back and plan it all and come back down and do something like that again. So it's sort of like, I know in some of the Asian cultures, the martial arts and things, they talk about meditating on your death. So meditate on your death, not in a negative way, but it's sort of like, well, what kind of state, where do I want my soul state to be in when that day comes? What do I want to be saying when I come out of the body? I want to be going, damn it, I really didn't need to make that $1 million as a lawyer and have 15 houses. It's sort of like, I could have done this instead. Yeah. So it's a matter of focusing on growth in a lot of ways. The material is always important as well, and it can be a representation of the soul plan. But the soul plan and developing emotional mastery is probably, arguably, in the grand scheme of things, is going to be more important to the soul when it comes out of the body. So the soul, I hope that's big enough for everyone. Can you see yeah? So we're talking now about, let's just say that the end of a lifetime has occurred and the death point has occurred. Typically what will happen is consciousness keeps going. It actually keeps going. I'll just briefly reference, scientifically, they're very, very close to proving, if they haven't already, the consciousness exists outside the body. A lot of good books from a scientific point of view that are very, very interesting. Eben Pagan's books are really good. He's a neuroscientist who went into a coma and had all these out-of-body experiences and stuff like that. Should have died, came back into the body, and then became a real believer in out-of-body consciousness. I've got a close friend who was a surgeon in A&E at Bart's Hospital in London. He was actually the head surgeon there for many years. And they set up an experiment in the early 80s, I think it was. And their whole thing, people would be wheeled into A&E, usually unconscious and usually right on the brink of death or maybe even dead. And their job was, of course, was to revive them. So they set up a little experiment where they would hide objects in the surgery spaces. And they put one over there and they put one in the next room and one in the next room. And it'd be things like random stuff, a teddy bear, a shoe, something like that. And what they'd be looking for, once they got the person back to consciousness, it'd be like, what happened when you were out to it? A number of people would say, no idea, I was just blacked out and now I'm back. And a number of people would go, what's with the bear in the next room? Or what's with the shoe going on over behind the cabinet there? So yeah, they would have a memory, an actual memory of being outside the body, sort of up on the ceiling, looking down at themselves being operated on. Oftentimes it would happen if their body had expired. Yeah, that was probably the difference. If they had expired, like if they had to be revived and brought back to life, and they've been 2 or 3 minutes gone. So yeah, there's heaps of cases of that type of stuff where people have been able to report that outside the body. Good. So what is that consciousness? What is it? What's it all about? It's, well, let's just call it the soul, for want of a better term. After death, these are the typical things that will come out in broad strokes in the life between lives experience. We find that the soul has its own name, so it'll have a name that's, say in this one it was John, in that one it was Annie, and that one it was Muhammad, but there'll be a soul name that's been consistent sort of in the spirit realms for the entire incarnation and will always be their name. So that's usually interesting to find out, and sometimes they can't pronounce it as well. It's sort of like, oh, I don't know, because we don't speak English in the spirit realms necessarily. It'll have its own family, or commonly what would be called the soul group. And the soul groups are really interesting, and they go at different levels of development. Groups can kind of all evolve at roughly the same pace. Usually some members are a little bit further ahead and some are dragging the chain a little bit, but eventually the idea is to get the group through various stages of evolution. Sometimes a group will also have, they'll have an intent and a purpose in the spirit realms, but they'll be playing that intent and purpose out energetically on earth as well. So it's really interesting what can come out when people are in these deep trances. The group sizes, now usually they'll range, and this is approximate only, but anywhere between 4 and 25 members. The numbers do mean something as well. Usually if I'm working with a client, if they tell me they're 4, they're down to 4, that would indicate that basically what happens, as the groups evolve, sometimes a member of the group evolves a little more quickly and they move up the ranks. They leave that one behind and they'll go into a different group. And as they do, the numbers tend to get smaller and smaller. So anywhere around 8 to 12, you're looking at bordering on advanced souls. Anywhere less than 8, where it's sort of 4 to 6 or even less, you're looking at very, very advanced souls, probably getting close to the end of their incarnation cycles. And they are very interesting to do LBLs with, let me tell you. That's where you usually get more kind of cosmic or broader information. Most people would probably range between 10 and 20, generally. And the members, of course, the soul group members, there can be agreements that are set between the members for things that will happen in the incarnation. So meeting the soul group members in energy form when they're discussing, and the whole idea, of course, with Life Between Lives is you want to be doing it, hang on one second, you want to be doing it exploring the memories of exactly what happened from the most recent past life, which is a little bit different to therapy past lives. Jodica, you'll remember this. My dead person. Yep. And so we'll call it, I'll just put CL there. CL means current life. I'll put MR, PR, hang on. No, PL, sorry. Which means most recent past life. So what was happening in the most recent past life, the one that you had just before this one? Because the information of what's going to come out, soul travels up, becomes an energy form, crosses the planes and goes into more of an interdimensional space, which is more of the 5th dimension or the 5th plane. And they will bump into all the group members at some point, and they'll all have a little bit of a powwow about what's going to happen when you come back down into the current life. Who's going to be who? Yeah, go ahead.
You can be in more than one place at one time, can't you?
Yes, you can, yeah. I find that for most people, they've probably got most of their energy focused in one body. I know I've bumped into some people in different spiritual circles who reckon we're living 8 lifetimes at the same time.
No, but I mean more spirit.
Oh, great question.
Yeah.
Sorry, yes. We're always in both places. So right now, every single person in this room your soul energy, there's a portion of it still in the spirit realms. Yeah, does that more answers the question? Generally in the LBL, you'll ask a question, what percentage of your energy will you be bringing down? So, percentage of energy, and oftentimes it'll range somewhere between 45 and 75 maybe is most common percent of energy, which means that the soul projects a certain amount of energy down into the body, but it never ever disconnects from either the spirit realms or from the body itself. Not until the moment of death. Yeah. You can fight it out. Yeah.
So with the Hindu belief of the star chakra
Yes.
above you, so that dragging the rest of your soul energy when you need it.
Yes. Yeah, very similar. Very similar. I think the Hindus and Buddhists have got mainly the closest, like embedded in their cultures, closest representation to this, more so than any other.
So in yoga, we try to connect to the star chakra.
Yeah. How far up is that in yoga? Where do you put it?
Literally as far as we take our hands when we stand in the tree pose, just for each person it's slightly different. So
Yeah.
your arms are, that's where it's like they say, you close your fist and that's the size of your heart.
Yeah.
So, a little child that had tiny little fist is, so your star chakra, the distance between that and the crown chakra,
Yep.
it varies.
Okay.
So there isn't a fix, like I couldn't say it's like...
It's exactly 3 feet or yeah. But yeah.
And so the soul energy that we've left behind,
Yep.
we can access it, like, more or less like a credit card.
Yeah, I think it's like it's like a
If you
cosmic.
got nothing in there,
Yeah.
nothing in the car, just put it back in your wallet.
It's like a cosmic gateway almost. It sort of serves as a bridge, perhaps, between the higher realms and where your soul is stored.
Your soul group.
Is that what they call the seat of the soul? I know you've got your crown chakra. It depends on the tradition, because then there's a few other chakras in between, and then it gets up to like 12 chakras and then 15 chakras, and it kind of just keeps going. So I think
The soul chakra is just light.
yeah.
And it's just energy, and you just draw this energy in. And like when you were talking about your friend who fought the Satakara,
Oh yeah. Yep.
my feeling is that she would have just gone on the star chakra and just beaten the heck out of it.
Quite possibly.
Jumped over the wall then, And
That-
it's like with a mother, if something is happening to their child,
Yep.
they can almost get this what we call superhuman.
That's right.
Superhuman.
It's like lift the car off. Yeah, that type of thing. Yeah.
That's drawing on the rest of us. You say, if someone only comes here with 45%,
Yes.
they are running on very low fuel.
Yeah, they usually regret it too if they only bring that much. The intent for bringing so little is that they're probably still working on something in the soul plan. So it's almost like they're like that's just as important as the lifetime. So I'm not going to bring as much with me.
And do you bring that in with the suicide cases? I reckon this is just my feeling.
Yep.
That they've just brought too little, and that the pull to go back to the other 70%
Yep.
is like, what am I doing with 30% here? I'm not functioning at all. And
Well,
the other
yeah.
people who are functioning so well, and you look at them and think, for crying out loud, look what all they've achieved in such a short space of time. But they're way ahead when they came.
What I love about this work is there's no one size fits all. There's no. So you find that kind of like what I was saying before, if you had 10 people lined up and let's just say we found suicide in their most recent past life or any other past life, there'd be a variety of factors that were unique to that soul and to that lifetime. So it's not all automatically connected.
So does anyone ever know how much they brought back?
Yeah. You find it out. Sorry, it's on a later slide, but you would find it out. Oh, excellent! It's on the next slide. Can I hold that just for the moment? Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Generally in the meeting with the elders, and I'll talk about that in a moment. Yeah. The soul itself. Now, it will make agreements before coming into the lifetime. So those agreements, they will relate to generally unfinished business, emotional patterns or spiritual lessons that they're aiming to master. It could have karmic connections to other souls that haven't been finished off, that have to be played out in a new form. There will always be agreements. There's nothing random about a lifetime. I mean, there's elements of free will and leave it open for randomness, but there will definitely be agreements in every single case. The soul will specifically choose the body, the family and the earth location to learn lessons. It always has a link between experiences in past and present lives, unless there aren't any past lives. There's very few out there, but I have come across about 4 clients now who don't have past lives. This is their first go. It's like, wow, okay, interesting to work with. The soul will set up the criteria for issues in this life, and that all issues, every single issue, whatever it is, will have a spiritual purpose behind it. Anyone heard of the Akashic records? Yeah? Every soul has an Akashic record. It goes back to the moment of their conception as a soul. And they will also have a purpose in the spirit world. Being able to access the Akashic records. I've had a number of clients just do it spontaneously as part of regressing through their memories. You kind of go, what happens next? Oh, I'm in a library now. Oh, okay. Tell me about the library. Oh yeah, it's this kind of, yeah, it's really cool. There's these beings floating all over the place, and I've got this big book in front of me. Oh, okay, what's the book all about? Oh, this is my record. Yeah, this is and I'm looking through it to learn certain things. Like, okay. Sounds like you've just gone straight to the Akashics. Some souls may have travelled interdimensionally or to other worlds. Some souls may even originate from other worlds. So we're getting out there. We're definitely getting out there. But I had someone, what day is it today? Sunday. Last Wednesday, I had someone who did this in an LBL. Fascinating, 40-minute chat. She was telling me all about this planet that she was on. And not only that, but what it was about and why she spends time there and that she originates from that place. And it's great. I love it when they go off the map, you know. It's fantastic. Oh, and here we go. It will bring a percentage of soul energy into the lifetime. So it's not like 100% of the soul just goes blop straight down into the body. It will only be a percentage. The percentage is usually agreed on in one of these stages that we'll talk about here. So a typical between lives experience, obviously it starts with the death in the most recent past life normally, and they cross over. So they will give a description of moving up and away from the body. Sometimes they're traveling fast, sometimes slow. Sometimes they feel like they're being sucked up. Sometimes they go by themselves. Sometimes they'll give a description of like an energy tunnel. Most of the time they end up sort of floating at whatever pace, and we'll get to a natural stop point. I'll go, what's happening now? I'm just hovering in the void. There's just sort of this void. It's almost like a little way station or a check station before they get to cross over into the spirit realm. A lot of the time someone will come to meet them. Yeah?
Do you get people that say that they're stuck?
Occasionally. What that usually indicates, good question, is that something's wrong with the death point. And this is more of a therapy thing. It's more of a therapy thing. I mean, you can get some very, very nasty deaths in past lives that can cause traumatic damage, fragmentation, that type of stuff. So you have to do a lot of repair work there. Once you've done the repair work, the crossing over becomes very easy a lot of the time. Yeah. It will depend on the nature of the death and or if they've had a highly traumatic past life as well. Because sometimes what happens is that they don't feel finished. Part of their consciousness doesn't feel like it's finished with the earth experience yet, so it's reluctant to go. Or it may even be that in the natural flow of their memories, they may have been stuck earthbound for some time. That happens as well. Yeah. So it's like I said, it's not a one size fits all. But I'll tell you one thing. I know that at some point there will be memories of them doing that crossing over, or they wouldn't be back in a new body. There'd be a ghost somewhere, or there'd be an attachment somewhere, or something like that. So, yeah. Oftentimes, one of the first things that happens when a soul reconnects with the spirit realms has an opportunity to review the past life. This is a really important thing, and it typically happens soon after crossing over. It's normally done with a primary teacher or guide, and my understanding is, and it's certainly been the case with all my own clients, is that we all have a primary guide or teacher. Sometimes there's more than one, but there tends to be one that looks after us more than any other. And they're almost always present at the review point. So the review will be, what's happening now? I've been taken to this room. Tell me about the room. Is it a physical room? No, it's sort of this light room. It's got a couple of outlines in it or whatever. And I'm having images of the past life projected in front of me as like a hologram. This is where, you remember I said earlier, context and content change? The context is review the past life. The content could be anything. It could be my guide is showing me in a bowl, or I'm being taken back to actually have a look at the scenes in Earth time, whatever it happens to be. So, but the point is that they will be reviewing the past life, and they need to review it. They need to understand what happened in the past life and why, so they can plan the next one. How on earth can you plan the next incarnation if you don't know where you're up to? So that's what the review does. It gives them the opportunity to sit there and go, I get it now. Look at that decision I made when I was 35. Oh dear, that one sort of set me on the wrong track. Yeah. Then you get instruction and understanding from spirit guides, and then it's sort of like, all the pieces fit together. The lifetime all comes together, and it's like, I know where I'm up to now, and I know what I've got to do next. And it's like, great, okay, cool. Now that we've got that, what happens? They tend to shoot off, and they'll either meet up with their primary or secondary soul groups. This is often a really emotional experience for people when they do it. It's like, I'm home. Sometimes there'll be members of the soul group that will meet them straight off the bat when they cross over. It'll be like, particularly, I see this a lot if someone's been going through a past life and they lost a partner at an early age or something like that. A trauma happened and they were separated from someone who died. It's pretty common that soul is the first one to come and meet them when they cross over. And I think it actually helps with the crossing over, because they've been carrying all this grief and pain and trouble, and it's like, hang on a second, you're not actually dead at all. Cool, let's go. Yeah, this is good.
When we say things like that, they're soulmates.
It's a literal translation, and sometimes the soulmate relationship can be contractual is a strong word, but it's pretty close. There could be a contract to be partners. Yeah.
You get people with lots of animals coming through?
In what stage?
When you cross back over.
Yep.
Because you've had a connection on a soul level with that animal.
Yep. Okay, hold that thought for a second. There are different planes of consciousness. I mean, I work with 7 basically through the theta healing model. I won't go into too much detail about that now, but the planes, they get lighter and lighter as we travel. Just give you a brief synopsis. Let's see. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Yep, that's pretty good. 2 and 1, that's really dense stuff. So that's rocks, minerals, the things that make up the basic form of the earth. Number 2 is plants. So living forms, but they don't move so much. 3 has animals. Yeah, fairies, elementals, that type of stuff, they all exist in the second plane. Third plane, and this relates to your question directly. Third plane, this is the plane where we're in form. We're in a dense physical form, so be it a body or an animal or stuff like that. I have seen lots of animal type stuff happen, but around this zone here, usually around the death point. Once they start traversing into these higher realms, the fourth plane's the astral realm. You can get some sort of strange stuff going on there. And not everything in the fourth plane is actually a nice thing either. Some of them can be a bit not so good. Fifth plane, basically there's like this boundary set on the fifth plane where anything of a lower vibration can't enter the fifth plane. So soul energies can, sometimes they need a bit of a clean. But where you might find animals, I've seen this a lot in tribal past lives, where at the death point, the consciousness comes out of the body at the death point, and it might say something like, the great eagle's coming for me now, or the great condor, or something. And I think, this is just a guess, but I reckon it's almost like the spirit realm's way of giving them a representation to help draw them up to the fifth plane. Because that's where their consciousness has been set while they've been in the body for all those years. They're expecting it, you know. the condor's coming, or X amount. So I think sometimes that it's almost like a guidepost to help move them up. But once they get beyond that, sort of drifting further into the fourth or astral realm, anything humanoid, planetaroid, animals, etc., just fade away. They're kind of gone. And once they get up here, they're in more of an energy form. They tend to represent themselves as being, I'm a light body. They'll talk about an outline. So I feel like I'm a person. Often they'll talk about themselves as a person, because remember, they've got to, people when they're describing the experiences have to do it. They have to filter it through their consciousness to explain it somehow, and talk about it in English. So it's like I'm sort of a person, but I'm not a person. I can see I've got an outline. Sometimes souls will show themselves in a pretty clear physical representation up here, so they know who's who, especially if it relates to things that are going on in the current life. Okay, so secondary groups or groups. Groups, by the way, now they will tend to be clusters that are, they're all energy beings, light forms, and each group will be at a very similar stage of evolution. And like I said before, the entire group might be collectively working on the same lesson. They could be. I'm going to talk about the lessons in a moment. So you get these clusters of groups. And they're closely connected, and these guys tend to reincarnate over and over and over again. Sometimes our soulmate, best buddy up here, we have a little chat. Oh, you know what? I'm still working on defining boundaries. I'm working on, when I come down into human form, I've got to be a lot stronger with my boundaries, and I've got to develop a really healthy sense of self-love. That's my task. So how are you going to help me with that, Jerry? Yeah? Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to turn up, I'm going to be your alcoholic father right here, and I'm going to beat you senseless, and you're going to have quite a pretty nasty sort of run through your childhood experiences. That's an extreme example, and certainly is not representative of every case, but it is. I use it because it's possible. It's possible. Best buddy up here could be the villain down here, in an agreed form, because it's the best way to learn the lesson. That can be a hell of a reframe for somebody coming in who's hated their mother, father, uncle, teacher for 30 years or 40 years or more, to suddenly go, oh, whoops, oh, we planned the whole thing. And I see how it's helped me now. And I see exactly what the next stages are. I can actually really develop stronger abilities there, forgive them for whatever they've done, and take the lesson from it and grow and master it. Yeah. So groups are very, very important. And of course it works the other way. Could be best friends in soul form, could be your spouse or best friend in the current life, and it's great as well. Everything depends on what the intended purpose of the current life will be. And there is a purpose for everything. This bit here, meeting elders, advanced souls, these guys are responsible for guiding the lifetime. So these guys are higher than guides. And oftentimes the client, when they're ready to go to meet the elders, you get this change in mood in the session, and you kind of go, what happens next? Oh, I'm going off here now. And it's like, oh, tell me, we're rising higher and higher into the fifth plane. And I know, and they go to this special place, and there's a panel, kind of like what I'm looking at the moment. There's this panel like this of 6 or 5, sometimes it's 3, 5, 7, 12, however many. And these are really advanced souls who have been guiding that soul's evolution over a period of time. And the primary guide, who's not quite at that level, he'll be there as well, and he or she will be getting instructions as well, because they're growing and developing as well. So the guide is almost always present. It's always a one-on-one meeting with the elders, and the elders will sort of say, well, you know what happened in the last past life, you know where you're up to, you know what you're learning. Here, how are we going to set it up here? Yeah, and a big discussion takes place about that. You remember we spoke about percentage of soul energy before? It's normally decided at that meeting. I'll just put elders here.
Are the elders part of the Elohim?
Possibly, yeah. Yeah, I honestly, I would love to spend hours with somebody, like get a really advanced soul, and just spend hours with them, not to discuss their personal memories, but to actually try and map it out a little bit more. A few research projects have been done on that. The Wisdom of the Soul is a really, really good read, but it's not quite comprehensive either. They are definitely up there, yeah. I'm not sure where Ascended Masters fit into this whole scheme either, but they're also up there as well. So I want to do more research on that type of thing over the next few years. Yeah, that meeting is always very important, one of the most important parts of an LBL. The soul's very clear about what it's doing, what its aims are, objectives for the next lifetime. Usually the next thing that happens, almost immediately afterwards, is that they leave the meeting with the elders and they go to select their body. Yeah, what happens next? They go, right, I'm in a room now, and what's happening in this room? There are 3 bodies in front of me, or 4, or 5, or 1, or 2, or however many there are. And they get to have a look at the different characteristics of bodies. And there's usually differences in, could be location on Earth, could be race, could be gender, could be, there are numerous other factors that come into it. And they have to select the body that they feel will best represent purpose for this lifetime. It's fascinating. It's a really interesting part. In fact, that part there, I often find you get so much information from that part about what's going on in body down here. It's a really, really good part of the experience. So this is where they get to select the physical body and the circumstances for the incarnations. It's also up here, they tend to do other spiritual activities. These can be group learnings, Akashic records, etc. I like, when I train my students in LBL, I always say this is the anything goes part. This is where you could get anything at all. You know, it could be what do you guys get up to? As a group, what do you do for fun? You know, oh, we go off and we do this. We create souls, we make things out of energy. I had someone once tell me, oh yeah, no, the whole group, there's 12 of us, and we're in this, it sort of looks like a coliseum, but it's not. It's this big round thing, and there's pylons. None of it's physical, it's just like representation form. And I can see all of the 12 soul energies in between the pylons, like this. So what happens next? And it's like 2 of them just zap out into the middle and do this grapple rolling around thing where they're blending energies or doing something, and then they zap back, and then another 2 will come out and do this. And it's like, what? Okay, cool, yeah. Tell me more. And the other stages are exploring the process of reincarnation in the new body. This is fascinating as well. My very first ever client was a lady I worked with on my training in England years ago. I said to her, so it's time, you know, we've learned everything we need to do. It's ready to come down into the baby's body. Tell me what happens. Well, I get close to the baby's body and I can see the fetus in the mother, but I'm not going anywhere near it yet. I'm just going to hover in the aura of the mother. I said, how old's the fetus? About 4 months old. So I'm like, okay, what happens next? So I just hover in the aura for about a month. And then I just gently start to work through the layers of the aura, and I get close to the baby's body, and I tickle the toes a little bit. And then I just really gradually start to move in through the feet and the toes. And this whole process takes about a month, and I come all the way into the baby's body, and by about the 5.5 to 6 month stage, I'm in there, and I'm all set, I'm ready to go. I said, have you always done it this way? She goes, oh no, when I was younger I used to just bang straight in through the head, and I found that I had all these problems in the lifetime as a result of doing it, so I've learned how to do it a lot more gently, and it's a lot better. So, okay, so again, no one size fits all approach, but everything's information, and it's all fascinating in sort of learning where souls are up to and how the bodies are doing what they're doing. We're getting pretty close to break, so what I'll do, I'll just talk about just briefly, talk about the primary kind of soul lessons that souls typically work on, in earth form anyway, or in human form. And then we'll have a little break. There'll be a bit of time for questions as well. But as we read through this, just think about them as qualities. Think about them as feelings, you know. Like love feels different to acceptance, for instance. There is a very different quality between, what's another one? Trust has a certain quality to it, but it's quite different to being, like just feeling whole. We'll just briefly run through these. So a soul may want to come to earth and be in an emotional body that creates and produces symptoms and emotions and all kinds of things, and it might have agreements with other souls to come down and kick it around or whatever for a while, because it wants to learn how to accept things and build self-esteem. Now, in order to do any of these lessons, by the way, they have to be challenged as well. Otherwise, there's no point in mastering something. So that's where our challenges in life come in, is that we get challenged and we're being called on to develop mastery in one of these areas. These are very loose adaptation as well. I wouldn't put these as concrete, set in stone, but they're a good guideline for what souls typically say when they're in the soul realm. So learning how to accept things, learning how to adapt and change, because the world is an ever-flowing kind of place, and that can be really hard for some people to do. You ever met anyone who can't change at all? Yeah. So they could be being called on, that could be the circumstance, the underflow of their life to actually cause them to do that. Being, wholeness, so having a sense of wholeness, oneness within self. I often find that people who have been through some rough experiences are working on this because they want to bring themselves back to wholeness. In order to experience wholeness, you have to experience separation. Yeah? Charity, or being in harmony, so being charitable towards others. Learning how to communicate from the heart, that can be really hard for some people. So actually stepping into their authentic self and being able to communicate right from the center of their being, that could be like a primary lesson, or one of. Expressing self-power. I think we're seeing a lot of this lesson on the earth at the moment, certainly in the Western culture.
Come along for all of that.
Yeah, yep. Oh yeah, and on that note, typically what I find is that there tends to be one primary, like at this moment in time. And it could well be that a lot of souls have actually worked through some of these already and they've graduated. They've got their diploma in definition, they've moved on to trust, or whatever it happens to be.
I found with the, certainly with the yoga practice, I mean, it's all those things that
Yes.
we're bringing into
Mm-hmm.
to feel that sense of completion. And
You're-
if you don't do every single one of those,
Then you don't get the
that's
boon.
right,
Yeah.
that's right. You know, the charity comes with integrity.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, love comes with trust.
Yep. I like to think of these, and you're right, you are right, and there is a notion of us, it could well be that we could, if we've already worked through some of these lessons, I don't think they work in any particular order, and I think there are all kinds of different ways in which they can be molded together and that kind of thing. But it could be that you've already naturally mastered those in other lifetimes. So you've come in with a preset frame where those are good, but there will often be one primary lesson that keeps causing disruptions and keeps causing us to have to work on it and work on it and work on it. So wherever you're correct, Jadika, but wherever there's a blip, wherever one is way more harder than the others, that's probably the one that we're going to be looking at. Expressing individuality through boundaries. So we need to define our own space and create our own boundaries. That can be really hard for some people. And oftentimes, of course, what will happen when we're doing the past life regressions is that they will have failed at these. And they'll know it at the death point, and they'll know it when they get into the spirit realms. Integrity, so walking in harmony with self, all aspects of self being in alignment with the true self. That can be hard for some people as well. Love of self and love of others. Trust also means trusting the universe as well. So when things go really wrong, you don't get derailed, you can actually trust that things can come back into play. Now, of course, anyone working trust, for instance, that could be the sort of person who continually has another setback or another loss of job or another loss of whatever it happens. It's sort of like, it's that drive to keep trusting and to build and really demonstrate that quality from inside yourself, regardless of what's happening on the outside. Truth, so being self-responsible. Grace, walking in harmony with all things. These are a very loose representation.
Yeah, because truth can still stick with
100%.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah, you can see the crossover in some of them and that type of thing. I went with this list largely because, like I said, no one size fits all. When you do a past life regression and you do the past life review, they'll be saying something like that. Something like it. Yeah, you won't get a soul that like, and tell me what was the primary purpose of the past life. Well, I was learning definition. I was learning how to express individuality through boundaries. I won't say it like that, but they'll say it along the lines of, I was learning how to put myself forward and speak my truth no matter what the external circumstances were. Yeah, so it sort of maps into that type of quality. Yeah? It's just a loose representation. Another good thing to read, I'm not sure if anybody's read about the 7 rays. 7 rays of qualities, they're very closely aligned with this as well. It's like the soul will have a plan to work on something and it'll have problems going on with a lesson like this. It's broad strokes,
you know,
but it's
like
pretty
the
close.
Universal laws.
Exactly.
The universal laws, or with Christianity, you got the 10 Commandments.
Absolutely right. And I think they're all representative somehow of this same thing. So yeah, I don't like to teach it in a set in stone kind of way. Just prefer to keep it as it'll be very, very close to one or any of those models. We'll park that there for the moment. We're definitely at break time or thereabouts to it. Just before we do break, does anyone have any questions? Yes?
Me again, sorry.
No, that's good. Questions are good, by the way. Questions actually help everybody's understanding, and sometimes a question will really open the frame for more info. So, yeah, go for
Very
it.
interested with the percentage that you bring down. Is that to do with, like, I've had a lot of issues with grounding myself here.
Yep,
I know the reasons why.
yep.
But,
You mean in like just in physical day-to-day life, or?
yeah, that might be human.
Okay.
Don't hear me enough. I'm getting to being human. And yeah, so so is that to do with does that tie into the same thing, percentage or whatever, of what I have brought down with me to do with my grounding? Am I supposed to be bringing more in to ground myself more?
Got it. Good question. Sometimes this will relate to the chat with the elders. I'll just rub this whole thing off for a second. So this relates to the chat with the elders. Let's just say you go to the elders and you've discussed what's going to happen in the next life, and you know exactly what's expected and what's coming in, and they say to you, we think you need to take 70% of your energy with you for this next incarnation.
And I'm like,
And the soul goes, as we sometimes do, because we think we know better occasionally, or we may have a high priority for something up in the spirit realms as well that we don't know about. Yeah, I like that, but I'm just going to take 55. I have on occasion heard someone say that they took 55 but had an agreement with the spirit realms that they could up it if they needed to. And then I've heard go the other way, where they've said, no, I agreed to take 55 and they told me that I couldn't change it.
have
It will
you
come
ever
down to, yeah.
people who have taken too much and they felt like they lost their connection?
No. Usually it's the other way around.
Oh,
Usually it's the other way around. Usually they feel like they haven't brought enough. Yeah.
thanks.
Yep. Yeah, no props.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And during your lifetime too, they
Yeah.
can achieve something.
Yeah.
Recontract or something and stay in the same physical form and everything.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Yep.
What do you mean? For a contract to come in to do certain things and all these things, then if they felt, or whether it's been involved, that they had achieved that, and there could be something else that they need to do and recontract. That's how I understand it.
There's a section, basically how an LBL runs is you got your death point, and how I always run it with somebody is to just come up and just explore the pure memories as if it were in real time. So what happened in that moment, and at this stage if you explore the pure memories, they don't actually know their current life, although that consciousness flips in and out every now and then. And then when you get to the end of it, and you've explored all the memories and everything, you have this period of time towards the end where you pause it, and then you invite the elders to come back. And you go, now that we know all that from the memories, how's she doing? How's he or she doing in the current life, okay? They're 44 right now, and we want to have like a little time out, little half time, take all the information from that memories and say, how's it going? Are they on track or not on track? Can we tweak anything? Are there any contracts, for instance? Are there people that could be cut ties with? You know, there's some interesting things that motivate people to come in and do this work. I've had the occasional person ring me up and say, will I find out if I can leave my husband? If I should leave my husband, because I've been thinking about doing that for a long time. So, okay, yeah. Typically what will happen, and I always say the same thing, you will not get a direct answer on that type of thing. What you'll get is a possible projection of the benefits of staying and the benefits of going. Has the karmic relationship played itself out? Is the contract fulfilled? That type of thing. So you get an opportunity to explore that as it relates to real time now, person's current life now. It's kind of like, I like to think of it as oranges at half time. You know? Yeah. Okay. Sorry?
The plot thickens.
The plot indeed does thicken, Maureen. And I think on that note, we will have a break, folks. We'll pause and we'll come back at 5 to 12, okay?